Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in to Watch This with Rick Ramos. As always, I'm your host, Rick Ramos, and welcoming back from his extended vacation tour of Europe, Scandinavia, and the subcontinent, where the fuck he was doing, Mr. Ibrahim Chavez. Mr. Chavez, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I took a tour of my notebooks. I didn't fucking go anywhere.
It's a Blues Brothers reference.
Yeah.
He was in college. Yeah.
Respect. A little bit of fucking respect.
Always. Oh man, so here we are. It is the middle of August. The world is in crisis. Maui's on fire. Los Angeles is threatened with Noah-like floods. Arizona is burning over. And I think that we have the perfect film that can really speak to all this. We're talking about destruction. We're talking about whatever the fuck man is capable of doing to itself in order to screw up everything that we've ever achieved. I think that is, very simplistically put, at the heart of Christopher Nolan's new film, Oppenheimer. So, we saw this film. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to unpack here. There's the narrative, there's the directorial style, there's the performances, there's the release of this film and the formats in which it is. So we're going to cover as much of it as we can. We're going to cover as much as and what comes to mind. So that being said, you got a chance to see this in 70mm IMAX, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So what was your opinion on it? What did you think of the whole... What was the experience like? Had you seen a film, to your memory, to your knowledge, have you seen a film in 70mm? Have you seen it in IMAX? Have you seen previous stuff?
I'm trying to think of what I saw at the Cinerama Dome when it still had shit playing there.
Well, you and I saw Lawrence of Arabia in 70mm.
But that was at... I think we saw it at the Egyptian.
No, we saw it at the Cinerama Dome.
I don't think... We must have seen it twice, because I think we also saw it at the Egyptian.
I've only ever seen it... I've seen it at the Cine Capri in Phoenix, Arizona, when that existed back in the late 80s, 90s. And then I saw it... I've only ever seen it at the Cinerama Dome. I've seen Apocalypse at the Egyptian. Yeah. We saw The Irishman at the Egyptian. We've seen a number of films at the Egyptian, but I think the Cinerama Dome was our 70mm Lawrence of Arabia.
We might have seen... Did we see Samsara at the Cinerama Dome?
Yes. I saw... You know what? I remember we saw Samsara at the Cinerama Dome. I saw Baraka at the Egyptian.
Okay.
And I don't know when you...
This means nothing to the listener.
No, it doesn't, but it's...
to the viewer.
It means everything to us. That's what it means.
So, in terms of the scope, for me, the whole process was interesting because I liked that it just kind of... It was a return to an experience for me, because I went online to get tickets, and there were no fucking tickets.
Yeah, same problem over here.
And the only things that were available were right in the front, against the fucking wall right at the screen. And so I have the luxury of living in LA. So specifically what I mean about luxury of living in LA is that we have in and around LA various IMAX theaters. There are about 5. So I had options.
But not all of them are actual IMAX theaters.
Right. But they have the capability to show.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there were other formats that the movie was available in. So I bought tickets 2 weeks out, and I had to. It worked out because I coordinated it with some weekend plans that I had. But so I saw it further out than I normally would have, and further out distance wise, and I guess further out time wise. And so the build up was crazy because that's why I texted you and I was like, this shit is fucking sold out. Like, jump on this.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a sense of anticipation. And there was a sense of value because it was like, there was the scarcity aspect because you're trying to get these tickets. So in that sense, like the economics of it were interesting because I want to get some tickets. I want to see this, and I had to get 2 tickets next to each other, which is harder too. And so went, saw it, and experienced it, and there was a payoff for all of that anticipation and that effort that you don't get when you can stream something at home, or you don't get on a normal any given fucking Sunday when you just say, hey, let's go watch Barbie or whatever the fuck you want to watch, and you just buy the tickets and you just show up. Because you had to like chase this movie. So for me, it was something that I hadn't experienced in a while, and it was good to experience that for me. And did you see it? How did you see it?
I saw it in 70mm IMAX, and I gotta say that it was a little bit of a disappointment on that end because I'm not a big fan of changing aspect ratios, and I think it becomes a self-indulgent. I think it becomes a self-indulgent type of filmmaking. I would have preferred to see and I saw the film twice. I saw it very close the first time in like the third row. It was huge. It was overwhelming. It was beautiful. And then I saw it again this week. So there was like a 2-week span in between seeing it. I saw it this past week, last Tuesday, in a regular, in the same theater, but much higher, in a much better position to view it. And what I found was, because I'm very aware of things that are changing, I don't like the inconsistency of a format. So a lot of these shots that are massive, of the New Mexico desert or the actual explosion, I thought it was a little bit too it drew attention to itself. I think camera work, for the most part, should not draw attention to itself. I think it should make a statement. I think it should show the story, and it should work towards the story. That's not what happened here. Whenever Nolan switched over to IMAX, it became very apparent that he was trying to wow you. Now, this works in action films like his Batman, his The Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises films, and it can work in certain action films when you're not as invested in a story, in a real story, the way that you are with this film. It became overly problematic because I was like, okay, now we're in IMAX. Okay, now we're in IMAX. Now we're back to 7. Now we're back to 2, 3, 5 to 1. And
so you're in your head, and put you in your
I'm
head.
in my head all the time. If I had it to do over again, I'm glad I saw it for the episode. And there might be some people that say, well, who are you to say Christopher Nolan is a great filmmaker? Who are you to say that this was wrong? I'm just saying that it's wrong for me. It would have been much better for me if I had just gone to my local theater and seen it in 70 millimeter. Not a 35 millimeter digital projection, not a 35 millimeter projection, not a digital projection, because 70 millimeter is cleaner. It's a bigger film.
And so better resolution.
Much better resolution, much more beautiful, with the same film feel. Like, I just recently went to see, they played the Blues Brothers, and I took my nephew and my mom to see it. We went and saw it, and there was something, because it was digitally projected, it was something that was a little bit too clean about it, especially for a 1970s, 1980s movie. It was shot in shot in 79, it was released in 80. Yeah, it needed a little bit of griminess to it. I mean, I don't want a film where you can see the cuts and the splices, and I'm not looking for what Rodriguez and Tarantino were going for with the Grindhouse film. But there is something about the stock that should look old, and it didn't. Oppenheimer had that. Oppenheimer had that film feel to it, where it wasn't crisp. It was beautiful, but it was like seeing Lawrence of Arabia. It was like seeing It's a Mad, 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 Mad World or Apocalypse when they were projected in 70 millimeter. It was beautiful. But I did feel like it took me out of the story far too often, and this is what we call sacrificing our babies. Yeah, you enjoy working in that large screen format and being able to do that, but does it really benefit the film? I don't think it benefited the film. I don't think it really. I think a close-up is a beautiful thing, and if the film had been shot entirely in that aspect ratio, that IMAX aspect ratio, because the entire film was shot with IMAX from beginning to end, it's IMAX cameras. If they had maintained the aspect ratio, I would have been happier. Even though that's not an aspect ratio that I particularly care for. I like a wider film. I like a 185 to 1, 235 to 1. I like that rectangular look. The 133 to 1.
Consistency.
I want consistency. Unless it's something that really comments on itself. That it's self-conscious for the sake of... See, this works better in comedies. Like when Wes Anderson did The Grand Budapest Hotel, he was telling that story in 3 different time periods. And the time periods, the aspect ratios corresponded to the time periods in which those aspect ratios would have been used. So his 30s or 40s, I can't remember the exact chronology of the film, but the 30s and 40s aspect timeline of the film were shot in 133 to 1. That old box aspect ratio like you see in Citizen Kane or Casablanca or those films. Then when they moved to the 60s and the 70s, it was a widescreen. And then I think they settled on a 185. I can't remember the exact scenes. I haven't seen it, but it was part of the joke. It was part of the humor. So it was built into a story like that. It wasn't distracting. It just added to the humor of it.
It also, aside from humor, it gives you a feel of a time period.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That it's going for. So I guess it's kind of the way that Nolan in this film moves between black and white and color. The black and white is more like fact-based stuff. The hearings. Color is, there's more poetry, more guilt, more sexuality, subjectivity. That there's more drama there with the color stuff. I like the metaphor of IMAX for this film because I like the idea of a large scale film dealing with a large scale point in human history. And the 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 idea of metaphor in this film, and it's just like to see the mural-sized guilt on the face of the creator of the person that could potentially destroy the world, and that as a metaphor for IMAX, and it's not, and it's the exact opposite of some fucking action movie that has it has all these explosions, it has all this shit, but at the end of the day, there's no you go home.
Mm-hmm.
And like, okay, that was cool. Maybe you drive 5 miles over the speed limit on your way back because you're invigorated, but you go home.
Yeah.
This film is about, well, you may not have a home if this plays out the way it could, because we're fucking a little over a minute to midnight on the fucking doomsday clock.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's that. There's the aspect of metaphor all the way through to the famous Oppenheimer quote, the I am become death, destroyer of worlds. Oppenheimer saw in that he was interested in Hinduism and Hindu literature. And the basic context of that quote is that there's a conversation between Arjuna and the deity Krishna, and Arjuna is conflicted and ambivalent about battle, but he ends up going through with it because Krishna convinces him that he has to follow his moral duty, his dharma, which is to go into the battle. That's Oppenheimer. That's how Oppenheimer saw himself.
Yeah.
And in the atomic bomb, he saw a figure of Krishna, who, one of his forms, it's so large scale and awesome in its destructiveness, and that depending on however people have translated it, you could also translate it as I am time, or time am I, destroyer of worlds, or time am I, the source of destruction, world destroying time. The bottom line is, though, that it's this destructive power.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's the metaphor of IMAX to the metaphor of, you know, the large scale atomic bomb, right? The metaphor of the bomb to Krishna's form, the metaphor of Arjuna, conflicted warrior, to Oppenheimer. There's all of that.
I think I would have been fine with what you're describing. I like what you're saying. I think I would have been fine with that if only the atomic bomb testing had been shot like that.
But I think that the thing is that then you're limiting the implications to the obvious.
Mm-hmm.
You're limiting the implications to that particular bomb. There's also Teller, who is researching the hydrogen bomb. There's fission, splitting the atom, and then there's fusion. There's the implication of also the large-scale guilt. There's the implication of the metaphor of not only the bomb itself, but there's the proliferation of other bombs. So now, not only is it a race between first the Nazis against the Allies, then it's now the Cold War, Soviets against the U.S. Eventually, other nations are developing atomic weapons. And so now it's like, well, if everyone's picking up knives, well, now we need something bigger. We need a sword, we need an axe, we need a gun. And it's the space race, but of weapons. So then there's the guilt of it. So it's not only the atomic bomb that is huge, but it's Oppenheimer's guilt. It's Oppenheimer's legacy, that is IMAX size. And to see that conflictedness and the pain, that to me is more important than just to see some big ass bomb exploding. And the question of whether, oh shit, there's no sound for the explosion, which is also, you're going to see the light before you hear the sound, because Christopher Nolan is also a science person, you know what I mean, or whatever. It's, to me, the metaphor justifies the IMAX.
See, for me, the presentation is the most important thing. And if you're going to do something that's going to pull an audience out, I mean, maybe nobody else watches it the way I do, but I became very aware of it. Some do,
some don't.
Yeah, I became very aware of it. I think, and it's playing in 70 millimeter, regular format 70 millimeter. If I can make the time and figure out how to do this, I'm going to go see it in a regular format, and I have a feeling that the film will work better that way, because I think close-ups work. It's not so much the grandness of IMAX; it's the shot choices. It's the close-up. When you have somebody on screen, and the camera is inches from their face, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming, and in a regular screening, I think you can achieve that without shifting aspect ratios. And, movie watching can be a very difficult experience if you're pulled out of the experience. If you're too focused on the technique or camera work, or this is where they're trying that. Yeah. I don't want that, and that's my main problem. I see what you're saying with your argument on this, and I agree with it to a degree. I think theoretically that works, but for me, it draws you out. And then the addition is this format is only really available in 19 theaters in the country, 30 in the world. That's very limiting. That's for me. That's a very self-indulgent type of filmmaking. Well, because I think it limits. Yeah, it's Christopher Nolan's preferred version of what he's making, but it's no longer available to somebody in where this film is playing. The fact of the matter is that both the movie industry and the theater watching experience are changing at an incredibly fast rate. I commend his willingness to take chances. I commend his artistic vision in being able to try something that is available really only to somebody like him. He can get away with this. Not a lot of people in the industry have the power to get away with what he did with this film. I admire his taking advantage of that, but it doesn't work. And
Go ahead.
Well, part of the problem is not everybody is going to get to see this particular vision. And I don't think that it's wrong to create it for that.
Right.
But it's unfair to a viewing public who will never get the opportunity to see it in this format. Somebody shouldn't have to drive 200 miles to see a fucking movie. It's not right.
Course,
that's undemocratic.
I get that, but this is not like arguing for a fucking living wage. This is
absolutely no.
This is like a luxury film, in that sense. But you're also saying that you can go watch it in standard and you'll probably like it more. So the standard is available to everyone.
It is.
So, and under your argument, it's going to work better. So they actually potentially have a better opportunity to see a better version of this film because it's at their fucking Cine, whatever the fuck,
Yeah.
down the street,
But
versus 200 miles away.
I'm one of the few people that have the luxury of being able to do that and compare and come to a conclusion that allows that.
I mean, few. That's a subjective term because, like, box office wise, how many fucking people saw it in IMAX? A lot. So.
But in comparison to
who,
what, I mean.
There are people who, that argument, let's make it for people who don't have access to water.
Yeah.
For a movie, it's kind of like, I get what you're saying, but the people who are going to watch it are going to watch it in whatever format they can get it. And the people who are going to the movies at all, that is a luxury compared to what other people are going through. So I resist kind of using those kind of arguments for something like this, because although I feel that art is of the utmost importance, I don't necessarily think that it's a fucking, and I'm not saying you are either, but it's not like this fucking crime against humanity that people can't watch it in IMAX. I think it sucks because it's limited, but there are people who will fucking drive 200 miles because they fucking want to. Those people will do it. People like us who fucking do a film podcast should fucking like work to fucking see that movie somehow. It's, you had probably one fucking theater in your state that offered it.
Yeah.
I had 5.
But the thing about it is, of
if
those
it was in
5,
San Francisco, would I have driven there? Probably not. But
also, those 5 IMAX theaters, maybe 2 of them are actual IMAX.
Right.
Not everyone that claims it. There was a theater near my house over in just out when I was living in South Pasadena. I used to go to a theater in Alhambra that claimed to have an IMAX. It wasn't an IMAX. It wasn't a true IMAX. The screen wasn't large enough. The sound wasn't right. IMAX, like I sent you a link to an article about this very thing. There's a lot of times they're just writing on a name, so you're not sure that you're seeing exactly the most ideal situation, the ideal presentation of this type of a film, of this film. I find that problematic as well, where it's confusing, where IMAX is a brand now, and you could be watching a 35mm IMAX film. You're not watching exactly what you think it is. The confusion and the restrictions that are available make it. I just think that it was the wrong move on their part for something like this. But ultimately, the film itself, I didn't think it really benefited from it. I think it was kind of a novelty thing that maybe Nolan sees. Maybe Nolan intended something that a lot of audiences were taking in, but that missed me. I mean, I'm just a movie watcher. It either works or it doesn't work. And I'm
glad that he chose this one for IMAX. I'm glad it wasn't like an Interstellar or something like that, which on some level you can argue makes more sense to do it in that because blah blah blah. But I'm glad that it was this.
If that had been the case, I would have hoped that you make the entire film in that aspect ratio. That's what I would have. If I could have done it, if I could have had any say, it would have simply been not switching back and forth.
And I feel like had it been a gimmick, I think he would have probably done it for Tenet. And to my mind, I think this is Nolan's straight story. Because Nolan's gift and his hustle is to take a concept and make it more complicated than it usually is.
Well, I'll say this much.
Playing with time.
Yeah, I'll say this much. Even with the distraction even with the problems that I have with the IMAX and the alternating aspect ratios of this film, this is a masterpiece. I think it's his best film. Um, it captivated me. It held me, and I was sitting 3 rows from the front, which is God, not the ideal situation
Right.
to watch this movie. But at the time, that's what I had available to me. That's what I thought was going to be the only thing available to me. Um, I was lucky enough that later on certain seats opened up, and I went to see it again, and I saw it. But you never capture that first feeling again. But even in that compromised setting, um, I knew that I was watching something that really spoke to both the American culture and the culture of filmmaking. So he did something really incredible. He took this story that we've all heard about, but don't know
I mean,
fully.
maybe.
Well, if you're growing up in a certain era, you know. I also remember that I grew up in the tail end of not the tail end, but a good part of the Cold War, 80s through. I remember the day after. I remember the proliferation of weapons, Gorbachev, Reagan, the wall coming down. I remember all of that shit, and
Right.
we lived in this time of possibilities. It wasn't Castro, Cuban, Bay of Pigs type shit. It wasn't Khrushchev banging his fucking shoe on the podium at the United Nations. It wasn't anything like that. But it was this tension of we feel somewhat safe, but there's always that threat that is there. I'll say this much. I have never seen a film as depressing as this one. In the manner in which it's depressing. There's a certain hopelessness in this film. There's a sad truth to this film. And I felt like the one aspect of the creation, the devastation, and the danger of the atomic bomb and the ensuing arms race, that was almost like a MacGuffin to the stringing up of Robert Oppenheimer.
Yeah, I mean, like that kind of goes with what I'm saying about Nolan kind of overcomplicating simple concepts and simple kind of like ideas about what, like Memento it's like it has this Pulp Fiction aspect because it fucks with time. But it's just a film about memory. And obviously I'm reducing it to its most simplistic thing to make my point. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think like you can basically use an index card to say, okay, Inception, I want to make a heist film, but let's use some inspiration from an anime, and let's do this, and but now we're gonna make the heist film, but we're gonna make it about dreams and levels of consciousness, the way you would have levels of a building, instead of just levels of a fucking bank building or whatever. A spy film, an index card or a post-it note, however you want to do it. Tenet. We're going to make a spy film, and the MacGuffin is going to be this fucking time thing. Time machine. It's not really about the time machine. I just want to make this movie, but the time machine is the Maltese Falcon of the movie, so everything's going to revolve around that. Interstellar. You know what I mean? I want to do a sci-fi, time travel, whatever thing. Well, it's going to be this black hole. This seems like a straight biopic, but it's actually ABA. It's like a sandwich. You have it's a betrayal story.
Yeah.
And sandwiched in between the A, your slice of bread betrayal. B is your atomic bomb testing and creation, development, whatever. A, again, the other slice of bread, the betrayal story, with switching between black and white. So he makes it more complex. So in that sense, he also makes it more elegant. Sometimes it's more elegant to be simple. Sometimes I think in his case, either it works or it doesn't. Tenet, we talked about that it didn't really work, but plus the audio problems. But this one, it was elegant because of its structure, and it was more than just a betrayal story plus the story of the atomic bomb. It was this. It was the story of a man infused with guilt, a story of the Red Scare, a story of the arms race, a story of this villain played by Robert Downey Jr.
Great performance too. I thought he was wonderful.
Yeah, Strauss, head of the Atomic Energy Commission, and his pursuit of like political power and how he was willing to take someone fucking down, because of slights, perceived slights, insecurity, politics. It's really fucking interesting, and to have a great cast, but everyone is working in service of the film.
Yeah, there was nothing really flashy about there's this guy and that, because it's an all-star cast. I mean, there's a lot of people that just come in and you're like, wow, okay. Tom Conti is Einstein. I think Emily Blunt gives an incredible performance. I've liked her in the past, but the power that we'll get into that, but the power that she had as Kitty Oppenheimer, I thought she was just fucking, wonderful. There's a lot of faces in here that you recognize from stuff that you were like, wow, this guy's working on this, or this guy, and Krumholtz as the Jewish scientist that sees him speak in Holland, I guess, who was speaking Dutch, where he learned Dutch in order to deliver this lecture on just shit like that.
Yeah, the Netherlands.
Yeah, all these people popping up.
Branagh as Niels Bohr.
Branagh. I didn't realize Gary Oldman was in it. That threw me.
Yeah.
I didn't. You know who I didn't think that was Gary Oldman. I thought it was Bruce Davison.
I don't know who Bruce Davison is.
Bruce Davison was a popular character actor of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I don't know what you would have seen him in, but if you see him, you'll know, oh, that guy. And it looks just like, that's who I thought it was. I'll send you a picture of him. He was in a movie called Longtime Companion. It was one of the first films about the gay lifestyle and the AIDS epidemic in the 1980s and 90s. It was a really powerful film. He plays fathers and stuff like that, but Gary Oldman coming in as Truman, James Remar, everybody. I mean, but it was all
fucking,
in service of the
Josh Hartnett. I was like, this motherfucker grew up,
and that's the one I was talking about. Like, how the fuck? I guess it's disparaging, but how the fuck did Josh Hartnett end up in a Christopher Nolan film, and especially this one, and deliver a good performance? He gave a good performance, I mean,
he wasn't just some fucking bro. He was like, it was Florence Pugh. I think that character was like, I loved that. I thought it was fascinating the way the scenes were shot with her, how toxic they were.
Yeah.
I just thought it was just fascinating, and obviously controversially, she's the one that they present the Hindu text during the sex scene, and so they're and a friend of mine asked me, I guess he had read or heard somewhere that the sex scenes were cheesy, or I don't know, something like that, and I said no, I didn't think so at all. I thought I didn't think they were awkward, or I just thought that that aspect of him as a womanizer, and the way the scenes are shot and how it's paired with, spoiler alert, all of this shit is spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. The bomb has existed for decades.
Yeah, it's not like there's a shock on how this one plays out.
Right. I mean,
there's no
there may be
spoilers here.
still to come.
Yeah.
There may be still to come a shock on how this plays out.
The party's not over yet.
No. But the guilt of her suicide,
Mm-hmm.
The way that she's like, no pun intended, but like the sex scenes are inserted into the
trial.
hearing.
Yeah.
And it's just, there were poetic aspects of it. And I thought it was excellent.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was as well.
And I saw this clip that was talking about how, and I don't know how true this is, but there was a clip of how Oppenheimer versus Barbie, how audiences were like choosing, and whether it's true or not, I think it's still interesting, this idea that how audiences throughout the United States, what they were going to see in greater numbers.
Yeah.
And according to this clip that I saw, which may be bullshit, but I still think it's interesting. Again, according to this clip, which I don't know the source, we're just playing right now. We're just talking. According to this clip, this person presents the idea that you could see, based on the way the viewings were, especially early on, the way that, I don't know how it is now, that the viewing choices were kind of distributed the way that, among the states, the way that people's voting patterns follow. So it was like,
oh yeah, red and blue. I remember that.
Blue states were watching Oppenheimer, and red states were watching Barbie. Apparently, I haven't seen Barbie. Apparently,
I hear it's good. I hear it's really good.
I imagine that, let's say in 10 years we do that films of the decade, and we do this decade. I'm sure Barbie will be either on an honorable mention or on one's top 10 because of cultural significance, and the politics of it, and the critique, and the feminism, and the whatever. Mm-hmm. But it was like red states, and apparently, like, there's a backlash in red states to Barbie, whatever. But the fact is that, according to this, red states were more watching Barbie, and blue were watching Oppenheimer, and I thought that was interesting. And of course, the blue state that was like the bluest in terms of who was watching Oppenheimer like the most, it was New Mexico. Because Los Alamos is the site of the Trinity test, and there's also the idea that in order to clear some of that land for the Manhattan Project site, a lot of Hispanos were displaced. These are the descendants of Spanish colonials who, ironically, fucking displaced indigenous people there. I mean, obviously, indigenous people were displaced from fucking coast to coast, right? From sea to shining sea. But the history of New Mexico is fraught with racism and the ideas of history and etc. and colonialism and whatever. But and I know this firsthand. But yeah, there was a displacement of like certain families, probably maybe 30 properties or something like that. And so New Mexicans are super into watching that film, and a lot of people get work on these bases and all that stuff. But I thought that was interesting, the politics of it. And, when there's still war, there's always war. But still, Russia, whether it's the Soviet Union or it's Russia or it's whatever, it's still looming, right? This idea. So I thought that was interesting. But on some level, as you said, people know, they may not know the lead up or they may not know the before or the after of the story, but they know that there was hopefully they understand that the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan during World War II. And it's the only time that atomic weapons have ever been used in war.
Yeah.
So far.
It's a problematic, I mean, when I say this was the most depressing film I've ever seen, I was honest about that. I'm very, and it's just not, I'm not saying something to get likes or to, this is the way I felt. I walked out of, well, let me, American Me was the most depressing thing I ever saw, but this was very fucking close. American Me for different reasons, but this film, it made me look at the world that we live in, and I just sat here thinking, my God, we're so close to self-destruction at any given time. How the fuck is it that it's not even a matter of it's great that we're still here. It's how the fuck are we still here?
Yeah.
That's the question. It really is, and that brings it up. And when you examine the trajectory of somebody's life, because we look at Oppenheimer, we first meet Oppenheimer in this film as a graduate student in I think England. I'm not sure what school he's in, but he's 22 years old. Cillian Murphy is playing him. He's got that mop top curly head. He's a Brooklyn kid learning in this higher institution, this European higher institution. There's a lot of attitude. There's a lot of I wouldn't say there's so much ego, but this is definitely a guy that's confident about himself and what he brings to the table, but also very idealistically set in his ways. Now, Oppenheimer is a problematic human being because of his obvious relationship problems, his womanizing, his
that's fucking.
But it makes it for an interesting.
I'm not dismissing it, but I'm just saying, like, that's fucking, like, people have problems.
Yeah, people have problems. It's not a it adds to a good story. It makes a very good story.
Yeah, it does.
It does. It just absolutely.
The more
does.
toxic, the fucking more engaging.
But what's problematic for me about it, and I'm not saying problematic as a story structure or a narrative, is that he could be so trusting of the government that I think what elevates Emily Blunt's performance as Kitty Oppenheimer is that I identified with her when she screams at him and, why won't you defend yourself? Why won't you defend us? It was a very real moment for me because I'm sitting there going, how the fuck did you not know that something like this was probably going to happen? That this was Now, it's one of those best bad choices where should we have the bomb or should Hitler and the Nazis develop the bomb? I think even as much of a fucking anti-nuclear person, I have to say that I'm glad it worked out the way it did. Although the idea of dropping the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that's fucking. there's a part of me that says that should never have happened.
Of
It
course,
should
I
have
mean
been, you know.
I think that's goes without fucking question. Like,
No, because there's a lot of people that argue that, you know, it was essential, it was necessary,
okay,
it
go
saved
watch The
American
Fog of
lives.
War.
Yeah.
I mean, not you.
You know what? No,
We've
no.
talked about
You know
this.
what? I'm glad that you brought this up because while I was watching this film, Robert McNamara came back into
He's
my head.
screaming. Yeah,
Screaming,
he's screaming
yes.
at you, right?
Yeah, yeah. This film,
Me too.
I couldn't. I kept thinking. I don't know why I didn't put on. Maybe because I didn't want to. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I didn't want to be hit as hard as watching The Fog of War would have hit me if I had watched it right after Oppenheimer. Maybe it scared me a little bit because that film resonates. That's easily one of my favorite films of all time. One of the greatest documentaries I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's because of the brutality of it. Everything that McNamara talks about, everything that Morris captures and highlights in that film plays out in real time against Oppenheimer's story. And it's sad. And it's
including
yeah.
Understanding your enemy.
Yeah.
And that's one of Oppenheimer's mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Greene is an author very popular in prisons. He wrote The 48 Laws of Power. That's probably his most famous book. It's great because of what he did with the format. It's a beautiful book. It's filled with his historical research is first rate in terms of the anecdotes and how he applies them to strategies and people have criticized him as being this like kind of like Machiavellian type of, but this is kind of it's a style that he chose. So The Art of Seduction, 48 Laws of Power, the 33 Stratagems of War. This is kind of like his trilogy, and then he's done other stuff on human nature, blah, blah. He did the 50th Law with 50 Cent, etc. I think it's the first law of the 48 Laws of Power is, I don't know where my copy is. Anyway, I think that's the first law, if I remember correctly. It's never outshine the master. And Oppenheimer is kind of guilty of that because he was egotistical, and he was driven. He was all of these things. He was interested in Niels Bohr and Einstein and all these scientists that had their place in history. That people later, on some level moved on from, and Einstein kind of like told him that would happen.
Yeah.
Because it's generational, right?
Mm-hmm.
The young lion, the old lion. But he wasn't into the politics. He was into the politics of how the weapon would be used. But he wasn't into the politics and he was into the politics of getting into being at the head of the table in terms of the development of the project. But he wasn't into the politics of the court. He wasn't into the politics of the machinations of everything surrounding the bomb. He was into politics in terms of he was left wing, and had communist connections, especially early on. So he was into that which was political, but he wasn't into the intrigue. That's what I mean in terms of those politics. And his wife was very aware, but he was so ambivalent. I mean, kind of has this torn love-hate relationship with everything. He loves his wife, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, he's doing these other things, right?
Yeah.
He loves his mistress, but he's also torn about her. He devotes his life to this project, but he's torn about that. Everything is, he himself is like the atom that is split. He himself is like suffering between these dueling forces. And like Arjuna, Krishna, in his mind, gets him to pick his weapons back up and just fucking go through with it. And Robert McNamara is fucking screaming in our heads the whole fucking time. Do you realize how fucking close we were? Blah, blah, blah. And still there's that fog of war.
Yeah.
And in that film, The Fog of War, which describes that, the fog of war, they talk about how, Japan was already defeated, basically, because the cities were wooden cities, and they had already been fucking firebombed.
Yeah.
And the deadline for the Trinity test was in July of 45, and they bombed already in August. So there was the testing behind the scenes, and then there were the bombing in Japan was a display.
Yeah, always was. It wasn't a matter of
the theater of destruction.
Yeah. It wasn't a matter of ending the war. It was establishing the power of the United States and
to deter.
Yeah. Well, to deter or to establish a hierarchy.
Well, both.
People talk about the power of the United States, this great nation, but we've only been what you would consider the top dog global power since 1945, and that was when the bomb was dropped. We came into the war. The British Empire was already falling. Russia was in a weird place. But if you talk to a lot of historians, Russia beat down the Nazis because of Hitler's ego in thinking that you can invade Russia during the winter. It was a fucking big mistake.
Of course, that's like the turning point. Yeah.
Yeah, but the Soviets lost so many people in the struggle to beat Germany. And then we come in there with this weapon. It's almost like we were picking up scraps. It's almost like we took credit for, the government, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I know it's not a popular opinion.
It's first to show. Like, we're trying to acquire a workable weapon before anyone else. And then once we acquire it, we have to prove that we actually have it. Because until we can show that we have it, it's all talk.
Yeah. So
now we're going to show, but then it's like, well, okay, what are we going to use it on? We can't use it on Kyoto because that's it has too much historical cultural significance for Japan. But we'll use it on and it's also the guy's like
honeymoon. Beautiful city.
Yeah, it's like I'm also going to vacation there.
Yeah.
Which like just fills one with a blood boiling rage when you hear that. And so now we're going to use it on these other cities. And you can, anyone go online and you can. I don't know the site, I don't remember, but you can check. Like it'll show you. If your city or the largest city like near you is bombed by an atomic bomb, like what is the range?
Yeah.
The blast range. You can pick. I've done this. You can pick like how high it detonates. Does it detonate higher, or does it detonate actually on the ground? Because that obviously is going to impact. It's going to affect the severity all of that stuff. It'll show you how, like, the fallout range, the blast range. It's crazy. You can look at simulations of what would happen if Putin fucking sent bombs to the United States and mutual destruction and this whole idea of like, okay, now they have that. You know, everyone else is saying, well, the U.S. has the bomb, but we need to hurry up and finish the development of ours.
Yeah.
And then there's the idea, well, if it becomes like the Second Amendment advocate people that are like, well, if everyone has a gun, we're safer. And if kids in schools have guns, then they'll be safer. Let them bring guns. I mean, you know what I mean? It becomes that.
Absolutely.
And it's like, well, and when they're born, give them an infant gun,
There's
newborn gun.
Rationalization that dictates that justifies everything, and
and now no one's gonna shoot each other because we all have fucking guns.
Yeah.
But then it's like, well, okay, we all have pistols, but now I need a shotgun because
at that point,
pistol ain't gonna cut it.
Yeah, at that point, it becomes strange love.
Right.
Where it's like, it's like now it's going further and further out of our control, and now you see it that, the earliest forms of AI and a machine that will make the choices for you.
Now you're into fucking Mission Impossible.
Exactly. And now I'm looking at this thing and I'm just like, wow, this is, I don't think that I'm naive. I don't think that I think I'm pretty, I read a lot. And even a film like this makes me wonder, in a way that I've never wondered before, how the fuck are we still here? How do we continue to exist? How is it possible that the human species has not destroyed itself? I don't want to be overdramatic. I don't want to be, this is not conjecture. This is true. This
is a fucking atomic weapon. Like, this is...
At the end of the day, how are we not Mad Max right now? Driving through the desert looking for fucking remaining life and trying to rebuild with warlords surrounding us. That's what this movie makes me think of.
There's that saying that, and I don't know, I think it's been attributed to Einstein. I've read it or heard it attributed to Einstein, but I don't know exactly who said it or where it comes from. But the idea that World War III will be fought with atomic weapons. World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones.
Yeah. And that's... You watch something like this and you realize how true it is. You see how accurate that is. I'm not trying to be cynical. I'm not trying to be a pessimist. I want to see the good, and I oftentimes do see the good in individuals around me, but at the same time, I also understand that the collective works in such a way as to be fearful and fear-mongering, and this is a movie that really... It made me think about a lot of things. This is what a movie, not what a movie should be, but more movies should be like this one. I'm not dismissive of the popcorn movies. I'm not dismissive of Marvel, Star Wars, the roller coaster ride movies. I disagree with Scorsese to a degree on that. But there is a truth in understanding when that is the only thing available, and when something like Oppenheimer's film comes out, it's a splash in the face. Everybody should see this film and take the lesson of what true humanity is. They should take it from it, because I don't know of a film that does a better job of explaining us to us, or at least one aspect of us to us.
All action films are based on this. I'm not saying literally the atomic weapon, but what I'm saying is that even if it's just on a microcosmic level, action movies are about, Marvel movies included, it's about some villain trying to get a hold of some kind of power to destroy the world, or with the potential to destroy the world. And now you have the good guy using whatever power he has or they have, potentially to destroy the world, and to destroy much of the world for the purpose of saving what remains of the world after that battle.
Yeah.
That's what fucking Iron Man and all that shit is about. It's fucking using all this crazy technology and all these crazy weapons and all this destructive force to prevent the bad guy from using their fucking destructive force and achieving whatever the fuck. Death Star, fucking Gauntlet, whatever it is. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Every fucking James Bond, every fucking Mission Impossible, if it's just blowing up a city, that's still a fucking microcosm of blowing up the world. It's the same fucking storyline, basically. And all of those things may be sexier in terms of the cum shot fucking explosions that you're seeing and the fast cutting pornography of it that you're seeing with Jerry Bruckheimer or whatever. But this is the real world in the soul struggle. It's the struggle out there and in there. This is the war movie that takes place in someone's soul.
Yeah.
Versus the war film that takes place in the sky, in the sea, in the field, however you describe it. This is just, I mean, Oppenheimer didn't go off. He wasn't all fucking deer hunter. But there is a deer hunter in fucking his soul.
Yeah.
There is fucking Born on the 4th of July in his soul. He may not have been physically disabled or crippled or injured or maimed in war, but he definitely paid the price for his contribution to the world. And like Prometheus, he's like, Dr. Frankenstein is the modern Prometheus, right?
Yeah.
And he's a mad scientist too. You know what I mean? Like when we were doing the tennis match, we went into altered states, John C. Lilly injecting himself with LSD and dolphins and all this crazy shit and the tank and that came out of like the death journey and all this stuff. Oppenheimer may not be, it's alive, I'm a mad scientist in a castle. But, you know, it's alive over here, and I am become death, destroyer of worlds on this side. He's still a fucking mad scientist, even though he was fully within all of his faculties and would be considered legally sane.
Yeah.
And even if he was mentally, stable and healthy, he is still spiritually, whatever that means, put big quotes in it around it, he is still spiritually a mad scientist.
Well, Cillian Murphy in the lead, he captures that. He plays this film in a very understated manner. And I don't know if people went into it thinking, or people who have gone into it thought it was going to be a big, overly dramatic, there was going to be a moment where he broke down and started crying, the kind of thing. But I love the subtlety of his performance in this film. The matter-of-fact truth to his Oppenheimer. So that by the end, when the government has cleared its own consciousness of the hearing, and has awarded him the medal, and his friends and family have come together to congratulate him, and his wife still holds that fucking grudge. That was a great moment. When she
Yes.
wouldn't
Yeah.
shake the hand of the guy that betrayed him. Of I can't remember. So many fucking people, so many characters going back and forth in this movie.
Teller. Yeah.
Teller, yeah.
The H-bomb guy.
Mhm. But this is where the Prometheus aspect of it comes into as well. He takes it. He takes the beatings. He just keeps going and moving forward. And maybe there was a belief that he would be vindicated one day, without any kind of guarantee of that happening. But he's a broken man by the end. I picked up the book American Prometheus, the book that Nolan based his writing of the screenplay on. And it's going to be really interesting to dig deeper into that character and find out who the man really was. As good a movie as this is, you're only seeing a certain element of it. A book will fill in a lot of the gaps, and even a book is only going to give you so much. There's only so much you can know. There's only so much you can learn. But I will say this much. I think, given the severity of this creation and what was the bastardization of what he created through the government, through the arms race, through all of it, Oppenheimer is still one of the great human beings, fighting for a justice that he believed in, whether it was fighting fascism, donating to the Communist Party so that they could fund anti who was the leader? Who was the leader in Spain at that point? Franco?
Franco.
Yeah, anti-Franco fascism. Recognizing what
Franco.
recognizing the danger of Hitler, and then speaking out against the proliferation of weaponry. That's why it's sad. It's a tragedy to me. No matter how it plays out, it's a fucking tragedy. Between dropping bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the arms race, where we're at now politically, and the danger that we're in, but also the sacrifice of a great man and a great scientist and a great thinker for the politics of power.
Mm-hmm.
I think Nolan delivers a film. It's very strange because I was watching this film and two films jumped to mind. Earl Morris's The Fog of War and Oliver Stone's JFK.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I thought about both of those films. And, I kind of chuckled to myself when they said one of the dissenting voice on the Strauss hearing was a young senator making a name for himself named John F. Kennedy. And I was like, oh shit, are they making because this bastard holds a grudge? Or are they making a connection there? I kind of laughed to myself on that. But the truth is, this is the world we live in. You and I are nothing in the bigger picture of all that is controlled. And if this is what we know, just try to imagine all of the shit that we don't know, that we're not privy to. How much of our fears and paranoia are solid and are living in a truth that we can base on the history of this kind of thing. This is a frightening. If you really watch this movie with an open mind, and you watch it with the possibilities of what human beings are capable of, I don't think there's a more important film. This might be the film of the century, I guess. That's a big statement, but I don't know.
The
I
film of
think
the 21st century.
maybe it might be the
I
lessons
mean,
of the
maybe so
20th
far.
century into the 21st century.
Yeah.
I don't know
I
of
mean,
I don't know of a film that really speaks to us about the danger of what human beings are capable of.
I mean, if you make a timeline of the most important developments in human history,
Yeah.
this is on there.
Yeah.
From fucking language to fire. Obviously there's a direct link to the harnessing of fire. With the Prometheus metaphor and all that. And Prometheus is punished for stealing fire from the gods. But language, fire, all the way through all these different agriculture, technology, Iron Age and all and so on, steel, printing press. It's the steam engine, all the major writing throughout from prehistory. Once we establish that there is history, not modern, but non-oral history, written history, which oral history is also part of that because language itself is a major, obviously, development of who we are. All the way, I mean, and relatively recently, the fucking atomic bomb.
Yeah.
Atomic bomb internet. And okay, now wherever we go with AI, all that shit, right? But computer. But atomic bomb. Everyone's freaking out. Not everyone, but you know what I mean. People are freaking out about the potential dangers of AI.
But let's
the
just say
unintended consequences.
If they're not freaking out, they should be.
I mean, it's definitely the stuff which sci-fi films are made, right?
Yeah.
The stuff of which, but looming still, insert the latest Mission Impossible film.
Yeah.
Is atomic weapons. So those aren't going to go anywhere.
No.
Everyone's going to fucking get rid of their atomic weapons somehow.
No.
You know what I mean? Like Chernobyl is not a fucking all too distant memory. Even the show came out relatively recently that was depicting that. Look what happened in Japan in 2010, 2011, whatever that was. That's not an atomic weapon. That's just energy. The climate issues that are facing us and how that will affect migration, how that's going to affect war, how that's going to affect politics, how that's going to affect racism, how that's going to affect all kinds of shit. Already with the worldwide resurgence in populism and fascism and right-wing extremism, and you get like some dirty bomb thing, you know what I mean? Leslie and I, we watched this series on Netflix, I think it was on Netflix, it's the satirical thing about how to create a cult.
Yes.
And one of the groups is in the 90s, Om Shunrikyu, they released the sarin gas in the Tokyo subway in the 90s.
I remember that.
And I mean, that's just a minor scale, you know what I mean? Like, think about in the 90s, there was World Trade Center 1. The first time it was bombed. It was Oklahoma City. Now 9/11. These are just local events that have worldwide implications. Now, World War II, those bombings were local events within the context of a global conflict. The next time that's used, is it going to be, if it's used, if, for example, Russia were to use some kind of tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine, is there going to be enough restraint to contain that to a localized event with worldwide implications, or does it become a worldwide event with worldwide implications? Does it set off what they were afraid that it would set off to begin with, which is the ignition of just the atmosphere itself? One of many dramatic moments in the film is like, they're trying to do the math on this and figure out, okay, if you detonate this bomb, there's however many supposedly low percentage chance that just the detonation of it itself will ignite the atmosphere, which will lead to a domino effect that will just basically create an atmospheric fire that travels the world because it's just burning through. Would that happen? Now, fast forward to now, or the future, the near future, not the ignition of the atmosphere just by the bomb, the detonation of one bomb, but now does a domino effect happen in terms of Reservoir Dogs, the ending, spoiler fucking alert to that. It's not a new movie. One shot sets off multiple shots, and everybody's fucking shot. Well, you all end up on the fucking floor. One bomb leads to multiple bombs. You know, it's a fucking reservoir.
It's a reservoir. It's Strangelove. Doesn't
all of it.
That's it.
No more movies. Well, no more people. No more fucking a lot of shit.
It's all bullshit and it's bad for you.
And the scariest part is that this isn't even bullshit.
I know.
It's one of the few that isn't, you know?
Yeah.
It is bad for you.
It's very real. It's the best movie of the year. It's the best movie I'm going to see this year. I'd be very surprised otherwise. Very few times do you walk out of a theater really asking questions, wishing that there were answers. I don't know. Maybe there are answers, and all the answers are bad.
And the idea that it's like, we've talked about this, and whether it's Scorsese dissing fucking comic movies and saying, you know, like, look at the current state of cinema, and then with COVID and like how that affected movie watching, and the idea, we've talked about that. Is it going to transition towards a boutique theater experience? People are out there fucking watching Barbie. People are out there. Well, it could just be the hype machine. It could just be whatever. But the fact of the matter is that people are out there. They are watching this film, Barbie. There may not be hope for humanity, but until the end of humankind, there is still a hope for cinema. There's still a hope that there are going to be these great films that come out. Whether we can all fucking see them the way they intended to be made, or if most people see them in one format, but then there's however you want to talk about the fairness or the democracy of fucking movie watching, that's a different story. But the fact of the matter is that what's out there that's going to come next? Like, that's the threat that I want, is the threat of a looming dangerous movie that can destroy all my preconceived ideas of what I thought a movie was. That's the annihilation that I want.
It makes sense. And it's something to hope for. And it's good to leave on a note of hope. That's been our episode. That's been the episode, ladies and gentlemen. We want to say thank you to Mr. Jorge Salcedo, who contributed to the podcast this past week.
And all others who have done so anonymously.
Everybody who has done so before that. You know what? We love you. We thank you. You're keeping the lights on. You're helping us get to the other side. As you know, labor of love. But labor of loves, they need a little bit of assistance every once in a while. So if you can find it in your heart to donate to what we do, if you see value in what we do and you want to hear us keep doing it, please go to buymeacoffee.com/watch RickRamos. You can give anything that you want.
No, it's a forward slash.
Oh, it's at a forward slash? Okay.
It's
buymeacoffee.com/watch RickRamos. And you can donate whatever you want. It is appreciated. You are appreciated. Thank you very much. That's our episode for today. You be good, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.